Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we present you 50 beautiful retro historical photos. We hope you will appreciate our work. Write your comment and click the subscribe button. Enjoy the show, and here we go. go. The Enchanting Eve Eden 1968, posing for a photo. Sabrina Norma Sykes model, 1959. May 1921. Washington, D.C. Professor Charles Seeger, a composer, is a brother of Alan Seeger, the war poet. His wife is a distinguished violinist. April 1865. Richmond, Virginia. Libby Prison, the infamous Confederate jail. June 17, 1922. Washington Advertising Club bathing costume contest at Tidal Basin. September 1952. Rolling Homes. Kodachrome from photos by Charlotte Brooks and Bob Lerner for the Look magazine assignment. Trailer story. Cincinnati circa 1912. Main Street from Fountain Square, with a nice view of the Blymeyer building. Circa 1910. Lunch hour on the docks, Jacksonville, Florida. May 1955. Actor Fess Parker on a 22-city promotional tour as Davy Crockett. Includes public appearances at department stores. Circa 1920. Unidentified buildings, possibly movie set, associated with famous players Lasky. September 1942. New York. 3rd Avenue elevated railway station in the 70s at 8:30 a.m. America's favorite at the Guess It scales. May 23, 1921. Washington, D.C. Professor Charles Lewis Seeger and family. Charles Seeger, wife Constance Edson Seeger, and their 2-year-old son Pete, of future folk fame. Wellington, New Zealand, 1890. Post and Telegraph Department football team with men in rugby football kit. Postmaster William Copeland seated behind man with ball. (1914). 3 kittens in nightclothes gathered around candlestick. April-May 1925. Washington, D.C. No caption. If you stare at this long enough, you really don't need a caption. 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 New York, 1918. Louis-owned building, 119 West 40th Street. Mainick Franck Architects. Charleston, South Carolina, circa 1920. Street scene with horse and wagon. (1898) USS Freelance officers and crew. This patrol vessel, a converted steam yacht, was loaned to the Navy for service in the Spanish-American War. Palm Beach in 1902. Royal, Poinciana Hotel, and Trance. January 1943. New M4 tanks, which will soon be hurling their might against the Axis, in the Schenectady, New York, plant of the American Locomotive Company. November 1910. Pell City, Alabama. Doffers and Pell City Cotton Mill. Superintendent of mill is also mayor of Pell City. (1917) District of Columbia traffic stop go signs. From the birthplace of that musical genre, perhaps the earliest visual representation of go-go. Circa 1905. South Salina Street, Syracuse, New York. Meet you in an hour at the Credit Parlors. March 1966. Actors Adam West and Burt Ward on the set of the movie Batman. September 3, 1920. Washington, D.C. Wapsihohon. We leave it to our resourceful commenters to fill in the blanks. September 3, 1920. Washington, D.C. Wapsihohon. We leave it to our resourceful commenters to fill in the blanks. October 1957. The Lemon family of Little Rock, Arkansas. Father Fred, Mother Edith, daughters Virginia and Rosemary, and son Gary at home, in front of State Capitol building, on streets of Little Rock. Jewel Shepard, American writer, Bikini Photo 1978. New Orleans circa 1923. View of a street and roofs. Also an ice wagon whose horse is wearing a hat. Bonus points if you can identify the street. March 1936. Washington, D.C. No caption, man with stop sign. Our second look in as many days at traffic sign history. June 1943. Gloucester, Massachusetts. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Lopez. They have 2 boys in the armed forces, 6 children altogether. He is a fish skinner in the Gorton Pew fishery. Washington, D.C., 1925. No caption, man with highway signs. Circa 1905. Bath House, Nantasket Beach, Massachusetts. Note the rules and regulations for automobiles, etc. posted at left. August 1953. Jane Russell and Mary McCarty on the set of the film The French Line. August 1963. Group portrait of several of the organizers of the March on Washington, among them, Matthew Almond, Rabbi Joachim Prinz, John Lewis, the Reverend Eugene Carson Blake, Whitney Young, A. Philip Randolph, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and Roy Wilkins. July 1942. Training high school boys to identify planes. There's no question about these young people's ability to recognize airplanes by their silhouettes. They're learning this and other essential facts of aviation at Wequahic High School, Newark, New Jersey. In 1955, my father visited San Francisco. This picture shows what the Cliff House looked like at that time. April 1968. Star Trek actor Leonard Nimoy in recording studio. Feelin' groovy. Summer 1938. Street scene, New York. With your choice of refreshment, shiny shoes and dancing on the water. January 1943. Chicago, Illinois. Union Station train concourse. January 1943. Chicago, Illinois. Union Station train concourse. March 1957. Women on board destroyer USS Maddox posing with sailors, modeling clothing with a nautical influence. Clearing away the debris, California Street, San Francisco. Aftermath of the earthquake and fire of April 18, 1906. (1940s). Arlington County, Virginia. War Department. Pentagon aerial view. December 1942. Switch lists coming in by teletype to the hump office at a Chicago Northwestern Railroad yard, Chicago. Washington, D.C., circa 1925. Federal Clothing Store, 621 7th Street Northwest. Circa 1904. Commonwealth Avenue, Boston. An ultra-detailed view of bustling Beantown. This photo is from my father's trip to Northern California in approximately 1950. I am hoping that someone who knows cars can come up a more precise date for the picture by noting the date of manufacture of the newest car shown here. New Orleans circa 1923. Upper stories of buildings with wrought iron balconies. Bonus photo for you, a beautiful retro woman. Barbara Edwards is an American supermodel and model with charm. Photo shoot 1984. And here we go. Bonus photo for you, a beautiful retro woman. Go. Bonus photo for you, a beautiful retro woman. Stunning blonde Anna Nicole Smith, 1989. Stunning model Maria Whitaker, 1989. (1953). Marilyn Monroe enacting a scene from the motion picture How to Marry a Millionaire. January 17, 1956. Raymond Loewy's Jaguar car. Number 8. Publicity photo from late 1950 for the Kaiser. Henry J. A small car, named after company chairman Henry J. Kaiser, that was a few years ahead of its time. Spring 1960. Efforts of John F. Kennedy's campaign team, including members of his family, in West Virginia during Kennedy's quest for the 1960 Democratic presidential nomination, includes Brother Bob at a drive-in in Bluefield. November 1942. Babies Hospital, New York. The welfare of this young patient, suffering from burns, is aided by having his bed placed near a window where he can watch the boats pass by. September 10, 1942, somewhere in Australia. American soldier at advanced Allied base with his pet kangaroo. November 1942. Babies Hospital, New York. Care of prematurely born babies is one of the most complicated procedures which must be learned by the student nurse. March 1943. New Orleans oil truck. Note the wings atop the tank. Circa 1943. Civilian defense in the United States. Blackout measures. New Zealand circa 1958. Men's underwear being modeled, photographed by Key Niven Company of Wellington. Fall 1942. War production drive. Anthracite rallies. Jeep headlights form V for victory at the night rally for Pennsylvania anthracite miners in Wilkes-Barre on September 29th. Similar rallies were held in other anthracite cities from September 28th through October 1st. October 1941. Main store. Fort Hunter, New York. Still on tap. Some of that new spring mobile gas. July 1909. Mrs. Bissy and family, Polish. Bottomley Farm, Rock Creek. They all work in the berry fields near Baltimore in summer and have worked at Biloxi, Mississippi, for 2 years. Washington, D.C., circa 1917. Hotel Harrington, 11th and ESDSNW. Circa 1907. Main Street, Rochester, New York. At left, the renowned Hotel Eggleston. Circa 1953. Actress Audrey Hepburn with Dining Companion in Mexico. December 1942. Mary Miller, operator of a router at the Boeing plant in Seattle, drills holes in a part for a new B-17F Flying Fortress bomber. Elson Chemist and Dutton Bookshop on Courtney Place, Wellington, between 1896 and 1897. New Jersey circa 1905. The Boardwalk, Asbury Park. Washington, D.C. Babies 1927. Today only 2 for 1. It's getting so hot in here. Summer 1941. Detroit, Michigan. Girls playing cards and drinking Coca-Cola. September 1942. Tires need checking too? Shifting trends of employment in wartime America have opened up new jobs for women such as this young East Liverpool, Ohio, girl who has pioneered in 2 new fields since graduation from high school. July 1942. These high school boys constructed this trainer plane, and the young man holding the stick is operating it. Note the instruments and control board. This is one phase of the aviation course offered boys at the Wequahic High School in Newark, New Jersey. Washington, D.C., or vicinity circa 1917. Gash, Stull Company, Bright Shepherd job. (1949). The mid-century look is now the American look. Photographs show people who personify the American look. 19-year-old fashion model and Clem is shown at work and at leisure. Circa 1910. Bathing at the Old Club, St. Clair Flats, Michigan. circa 1962. Dulles International Airport, Chantilly, Virginia, 1958-63. Eero Saarinen architect. Control tower interior. English actress Imogen Hassall, 1965. Washington, D.C., 1924. Ford Motor Company Manhattan Laundry Trucks. November 1942. Salt Lake City, Utah. Training women to operate buses and taxicabs. Fall 1960. A Kodachrome by our old friend Arthur Rothstein, taken for the Look magazine assignment. Tailgate gourmets. Food for tailgate picnics displayed in the backs of station wagons. Circa 1905. Lower Genesee Street, Utica, New York. July 1939. Activity around Station Master's Shack. Streetcar Terminal, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. May 1942. Southington, Connecticut, amusement park, with a dress code. June 1943. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Miss Frances Heisler, last seen here, attendant at one of the Atlantic Refining Company garages. She was formerly a clerk in the payroll department of the Curtis Publishing Company. Circa 1940, somewhere on the high seas. Boxing match in progress on the deck of New Zealand troopship Dominion Monarch, carrying second echelon 4th reinforcements to the United Kingdom. Probably Empress of Russia seen sailing in the background. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, 1957. Wife of the up-and-coming young senator from Massachusetts. Circa 1908. Allen House, Hartford, Connecticut. At the drug store, egg drinks and college ices. Maryland, circa 1948. Acme Market. Four Corners Woodward Shopping Center, Colesville Pike and Old Bladensburg Road. Schreier Patterson Architects. New York, circa 1919. Homer. The Metropolitan Opera contralto Louise Homer, and of Samuel Barber, and two of her 6 children with the composer Sidney Homer. June 1943. Washington, D.C. Muriel Pear, a switching clerk at the Western Union Telegraph Office. Washington, D.C., circa 1922. Boy and dog. Feel free to construct your own narrative. The Acme Supermarket at Wright, Silver Spring, Maryland, circa 1948. Acme Market. Four Corners Woodmore Shopping Center, Colesville Pike and Old Bladensburg Road. Schreier Patterson Architects. Circa 1900. St. Paul's Episcopal Cathedral, Buffalo, New York. With the Guarantee, Prudential, building and a bicycle repair shop as neighbors. February 1942. Detroit, Michigan. Riot at the Sojourner Truth Homes, a new U.S. federal housing project, caused by white neighbors' attempt to prevent Negro tenants from moving in. Vans convoyed by police department moving Negroes' furniture. 1939. Mobile, Alabama. Collins Store, Royal Street near St. Louis Street. The Panama Cafe looks like our kind of place. Note the Dr. Pepper truck in the alley. September 12, 1953. Newport, Rhode Island. Kennedy wedding, Jacqueline Kennedy throwing the bouquet. November 1913. Fort Worth, Texas. Some results of messenger and newsboy work. For 9 years this 16-year-old boy has been newsboy and messenger for drug stores and telegraph companies. November 1942. Nurses in training. Babies Hospital, New York. A graduate nurse, Wright, watches student Susan Petty prepare a hypodermic for a patient. Strict adherence to doctor's orders is something every probationer must learn. April 12, 1929. King Tut, President Hoover's big German police dog, now makes the rounds of the sentry boxes in the White House grounds through the night. He is shown with W.S. Newton of the White House Police. The Hudson River circa 1908. Steamer landings, Poughkeepsie, New York. Circa 1921 in New York, the British pianist and conductor Ethel Legінska, who achieved a dubious renown for skipping out on her concert performances, including a memorable non-appearance at Carnegie Hall. November 22, 1963. Overview of crowds of people waving as President John F. Kennedy and his wife sit in back of limousine during procession through downtown Dallas, Texas. Texas Governor John Connally and his wife ride in the limousine's jump seats. Bonus photo for you, a beautiful retro woman. Serena Grandi is an Italian actress and sex symbol of the 1980s and 1990s. Photo 1983. Raquel Welch, American actress and sex symbol. Photo shoot 1967. Stunning Eve Eden in 1963. Summer 1938. Daughter of Virgil Thaxton, farmer near Mechanicsburg, Ohio. February 1922. Woman on sled being pulled by biplane in snow, with Washington Monument in background. January 28, 1922. Snow, Washington, D.C. A frosty Ford Model T during the blizzard of 1922. New York, February 1952. Your Show of Shows comedian Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca doing a skit about a couple watching the Continental Dot. January 1937. Migrant agricultural workers. Family from New Mexico, camped near the packing house at Deerfield, Florida. Note the box labeled Yakima apples, which has been carried all the way from the apple orchards of Washington. June 1943. Washington, D.C. pasting up a telegram at the Western Union Telegraph Office. Doris and Dorothy Bell send and receive telegrams from the Baltimore Circuit. New York circa 1910. Broadway and Hotel Victoria. April 1952. Actress Audrey Hepburn experimenting with various hairstyles, wigs, and makeup for film Roman Holiday. Circa 1920s. Men building sand castle and two unidentified women. Long Beach, New York. March 1943. Acomita, New Mexico. Brakeman Ari Capsi repacking a journal box of a special car as the train on the Atchison, Topeka Santa Fe Railroad between Belen and Gallup, New Mexico, waits on a siding. June 24, 1938. Shirley sees her old friend the President. Shirley Temple leaving the White House today after a very important conference with the President. Shirley told Mr. Roosevelt about losing a tooth last night, and he told her about Sis Di and Buzzy losing their teeth. July 1920. Washington, D.C. Dr. H.B. Bradford. Professor Harry Bradford. Naturalist and animal artist. According to the Washington Post, was also, in 1910, President of the Anti-Vaccination Society of the District of Columbia. 1904. Main Street, Dayton, Ohio, home of the Tooth Tower. January 19th, 1951. Common accidents in the home? A sentiment open to a number of interpretations. December 1941. Washington, D.C. Girls in Hot Shops Restaurant. July 1937. Georgia Road sign. Photo by Dorothea Lange, who seems to have appreciated quirky signs. Circa 1910. Chester Cathedral, England. Major construction 11th to 15th century. February 1911. Bayou La Battery, Alabama. Little Julie attending the baby at home. All the older ones are at the factory. She shucks oysters also. Alabama Canning Company. March 1943. Conductor George E. Burton having lunch in the caboose on the Atchison, Topeka Santa Fe between Chicago and Chillicothe. January 29, 1922. Washington, D.C. Knickerbocker after collapse. Aftermath of the Knickerbocker Theater disaster, in which the snow-laden roof of Harry Crandall's cinema at Columbia Road and 18th Street caved in, killing 98 moviegoers. 1951. Santa Barbara, California. Lana Turner by pool at the Coral Casino. September 1942. Manpower. Americans All. Husky, bright-eyed Joe Gore Jr. is a young American of Polish descent who is determined that Hitler shall be driven from Poland and kept from America's shores. Canal Street in New Orleans circa 1910. Large building is the Maison Blanche department store. October 1942. High School Victory Corps. The Fireman's Carry. Method of carrying a wounded comrade is shown here by boys in the commando course of the physical education program at Flushing High School, Queens, New York. May 1936. Somewhere in Indiana. Auto transport at gas station. Imogen Hassall, English film and television actress. Photo 1964. July 31st, 1922. Laurel, Maryland. Two BO freights wrecked in head-on crash at Laurel Switch. December 1942. Armed guard at a copper smelter of the Phelps Dodge Mining Company at Morenci, Arizona. This plant is supplying great quantities of the copper so vital in our war effort. circa 1910. Beach Street, Manchester, New Hampshire. Washington, D.C., 1920. Potomac Sales Company front. Adding to the scant contemporary documentation of the Dixie Flyer, one of many assembled cars from the early years of motoring. July 1957. Actor James Arness filming on location for the television series Gunsmoke. January 1943. New York. 16-year-old boy who is in the Naval Reserve on Mulberry Street. Hans Coliseum, interior. A flag-bedecked footwear sale held by the Hans chain of shoe stores at Washington, D.C. Center Market in July 1920. Circa 1890s 1900. Beach and Ladies Bathing Place, Margate, England. Circa 1910. RR Station at Manchester, New Hampshire. Washington, D.C., 1921. Potomac Sales Company, Rec. Just up the alley from P. McEwen, Horse Shore. March 1943. View from caboose on the Atchison, Topeka Santa Fe Railroad between Belen and Gallup, New Mexico. January 1959. Majority of photographs concern Dr. John O. Brown, Negro ophthalmologist, and his family, and depicts various forms of racial segregation and integration in Miami. May 1943. Clinton, Iowa. Women wipers of the Chicago Northwestern Railroad going out to work on an engine at the roundhouse. (1913) Annapolis, Maryland. U.S. Naval Academy football team. (1913) Annapolis, Maryland. U.S. Naval Academy football team. F Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., circa 1906. New York, circa 1931. R.H. Macy Company. Building Broadway 34th Street. The original big box retailer. Washington, D.C., circa 1925. Federal Clothing Store, 621 7th Street Northwest. March 1936. Low-cost housing. St. Louis, Missouri. Cigars and Coke not included. Circa 1910. Coal barges at confluence of Allegheny and Monongahela Rivers at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. January 1922. Washington, D.C. Man in three-wheeled vehicle. Bonus photo for you, a beautiful retro woman. Amy Lynn Baxter, American actress, 1988. Or 1952. American actress Diane Weber, 1956. Christmas 1957. Having seen the boy toys at Kermie and Janet's house in Baltimore, we now move on to the girl gifts, which include Little Miss Revlon and Betsy McCall dolls, as well as a fun with needlepoint kit. Make your own horse. What else do we recognize here? Christmas 1957 is the label on this slide from the Kermie and Janet Kodachromes, taken at their house in Baltimore. Gifts include a Revell model aircraft carrier and something called the shopping center game. December 1953. Outdoor Christmas decorations. From around 1953 comes this color transparency, possibly shot by Charlotte Brooks for the Look magazine assignment. Christmas toys. December 1921. Christmas tree. Dr. Julio Bianchi, Guatemalan minister in Washington during the Herrera regime. New Zealand circa 1910. Studio portrait. Young woman in Christmas tree fancy dress and hat costume, with little presents and decorations hanging off her. Christchurch. Washington, D.C., circa 1910. Harris, Martha. Christmas tree. (1952). Entertainer Gene Kelly executing leap over film cans labeled with titles of his movies. October 1943. Washington, D.C. A mechanical drawing class at Woodrow Wilson High School. Dr. Grace Hopper, Director, Systems Research, Remington Rand, half-length portrait, seated, smoking cigarette. New York, 1902. Scene from Little Italy showing Minnie Maddern Fisk on bed, Frederick de Belleville kneeling, Claus Bogel seated with head bowed, and group of people in doorway. August 4th, 1960. Family and mourners at the Arlington National Cemetery burial of Willard G. Palm, RB-47 reconnaissance airplane pilot shot down by the Russians. October 1943. Washington, D.C. Sally D says talking with some friends near her locker at Woodrow Wilson High School. The Jersey Shore circa 1904. Young's Hotel and Boardwalk, Atlantic City. San Francisco. Corner of Montgomery and Market Streets, Monday morning, after Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. March 1942. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Fort Story Coast Defense. A tough job for soldiers is shoving the breech block of the giant howitzer into place. Circa 1900. Ostrich Farm, Hot Springs, Arkansas. Careful, these birds are dangerous. Circa 1942, in the vicinity of Washington, D.C. Conservation of fuel oil. Washington, D.C., circa 1925. Family group listening to radio. A baseball game, maybe? October 1939. On US 99 as it continues through Oregon. Lane County, Willamette Valley. Circa 1904. Virginia Avenue, Atlantic City, New Jersey. May 1940. Cotton Carnival, Memphis, Tennessee. Waiting for her royal crown. February 1942. Madison, Wisconsin Farm Short Course School at the University of Wisconsin. This class in rural society often practices square dances. Interest in rural culture and customs is stimulated at the school. April 23, 1926. Washington, D.C. Miss Dorothy Tierney with Porcupine. Boston, Massachusetts, circa 1895. Main entrance, Boston Public Library. Read all over. (1966) To the rescue. Many librarians believe computers are the only means to effectively cope with their bulging bookshelves. November 1909. These boys work off and on in Cumberland Glass Works, Bridgeton, New Jersey. Smallest boy is George Cartwright, 401 North Laurel Street. He says been working off and on since 11 years old. May 15, 1951. Johnson & Johnson Research Center, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Organic Laboratory. November 1952. A pep talk from Coach. Hamlet, North Carolina, high school football team in locker room at away game.